Today's video will be discussing John chapter 19 verse 2, the crowning of thorns, and where Jesus receives the red or scarlet or violet cloak he wore on the cross. As we might continue right now. So John 19 verse 2 reads the following. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. So words to note here, the word for twisted is plezantes, word for crown is stephanon, the word for thorns is akanthon, and then the word for head kephali, arrayed is perivalon, and the word for purple is porphuron, and the word finally for robe is imation. This is relevant. I will show you later why. Let's see what Matthew's Gospel says in Matthew 27 verse 8. Really, the only thing I need to mention here is that the word for the word scarlet is used instead of purple, and the word is kokinin, and the word for robe is a different word than imation. It's the word chlamida. And then we have finally Mark's account, which doesn't actually completely agree with Matthew. He actually uses the same word that John chapter 19 verse 2 uses, purple, porphuron, almost the same word. And then the word for plated is the same, and the word for thorns is only slightly different, akanothinon. And they put it on his head. Reconciling the colors will be discussed at the end of this article, which will actually be a separate video. For the matter of the robe and the different terms used and what the robe might have been, see my article on John chapter 19 verse 23, which also will be a separate video. Anyway, as we see in John chapter 18, Pilate mockingly called Christ the King of the Jews. Here the soldiers continue the mockery, but in physical ways, crowning him with a fake crown made out of thorns and covering him with pseudo-royal robes. Anyway, there's some similarities between between the maybe parallels or anti-parallel between the soldiers and the cherubim, because in the book of Genesis you see here it says, so God drove out the man, referring to Adam, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way to the tree of life. So it's protecting the Garden of Eden from a wicked man returning. And in this sense, you have the Roman centurion stabbing Jesus, piercing him and punishing him with swords, with the cat of nine tails, and so on, as punishment. So anyway, first, and I think this is the only one we're going to really discuss for this video, is the word twisted, pelizates. The root word, according to this concordance, is found. So it's actually in Strong's. It's considered the Greek word 4,120, and the root is peleko, which means to fold, plait, and twine. And it's found in these verses in the Old Testament: Exodus 28 verse 14 and Isaiah 28 verse 5. And those three verses we already quoted above for the New Testament. So anyway, Exodus 28 verse 14 is one of the many times John 19 seems to allude to Exodus 28, which is about priestly attire, the high priest, which is very fitting for Jesus. So anyway, here is a Septuagint translation of Exodus 28 verse 14. And you shall make 2 tassels from pure gold intermingled with flowers, a work of braiding, and you shall place the braided, and then the word here is pepeligumenon. Peplegumena, whatever you want to say it, tassels on the small shields, on their shoulder straps, on the front sides. So this is actually from the New English translation of Septuagint. Here's the verse, and it's interesting here because only on one of these is the word for twined or braided is used right here. And so the Septuagint actually reads, and 2 chains of pure gold wreathed together dost thou make. I should have used a more modern translation. Works of thick bands, and you have put the and you have put the thick chains of on the embroidered things. So anyway, so the word that is translated up here as so this Greek word, where was it? Right here, pepeleg mena, is here in the Hebrew text, in the Masoretic text, is sharsherot. I should say sharsherot, and it actually appears twice in this verse. The first time it appears for chains or braids, and the second time it's actually referring to an actual braid. But so whatever. So the first, it's funny because the first time, the first instance it's used, sharsherot is actually translated as krosota in the Septuagint. Here the braiding was part of the garment of the priest, not worn on the head. On the head the high priest wore a turban, but still, regardless, it's interesting that this word is barely used at all in the Old Testament, and only used in the New Testament regarding Christ being crucified, or about to be crucified, I should say. So anyway, sharsherot, if we were to go off that word, only appears 7 times in the Masoretic text, twice in Exodus 28:14 as we showed, and once in Exodus 39 verse 15, and then a couple times here in the books of the Kings and so on. Going to Isaiah 28, the other instance in which that Greek word was used for woven or braided, it says, Isaiah 28 in the Septuagint, Net's translation, says, "In that day the Lord Shabbat will be the garland of hope, which is woven of glory to what is left of my people." Here is the Septuagint, or at least the commonly received Septuagint Greek text, and here is the Masoretic text and translation from the ESV. "In that day the Lord of hosts will be a crown of glory and a diadem of beauty to the remnant of his people." And so the word here translated as diadem in English is the word tzifirat, and so it says vili tzifirat, and so it's just V is just and for is le or li. Anyway, here's the Hebrew text. The Septuagint says the crown is woven. Perhaps this can suggest Christ represents the faithful remnant of God's people, which it says this is what the Lord will be to who is left, or the remnant, or some translations say the residue of my people. Next video we'll be discussing thorns. It's far too long to put in this video. Anyway, this is Brahim Selassie, Orthodox Catholic one.